are going to be reading for the air signs. That is Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. So, before we get started, I'm going to use my singing bowl to clear the space. This is the deck that I'll be using this week. It is the Jack-o'-lantern tarot. I really love the illustrations in this deck. It's a beautifully, beautifully illustrated deck. And we will start with the air sign of Gemini. Oh, it's a little dark in here. Hold on. Okay. That's good. It's not actually dark in here. I just have my settings dialed way down on the camera. So Gemini, if you would like, take some deep breaths and set your intention for the reading. And go ahead and allow any concerns that you have that you'd like to address in the reading. Allow those things to rise up to the forefront of your thoughts. And if you find those things stressful, or if they're causing you anxieties, just take some deep, gentle breaths. And as you inhale, draw in the divine white light of Source through the crown of your head, down through the soles of your feet, into the ground below. And as you exhale, just release any tension or stress or discomfort that you're feeling at this time. Just release that right back out into the universe, and it will return to Source, and it will be transmuted. Wow. Okay. Changes are afoot for you, Gemini. Big changes, big changes. Let's start here in the past. So, Gemini. Coming out for you in the past is the 10 of Cups, and it's coming out in the reverse. So, what we see with the 10 of Cups is an emotional completion, an emotional cycle completing. Sometimes I read the 10 of Cups, especially in the past and in the reverse, as possibly like a breakup that was mutually amicable. So you just decide to go your separate ways with another person. And this could be a romantic relationship, but it could also be going your separate ways from a friend, drifting apart from a friendship. Or it could be some kind of catharsis that was reached in the past as well regarding closure, emotional closure. So that's what we see with the 10 of Cups in the reverse, and especially when it's showing up in the past. So there's been some kind of emotional closure for you, whether that is a breakup or ending a friendship or any of those other types of things that might lead to that kind of closure. Could also, as I mentioned, be a catharsis. So maybe you hit like a breakthrough with your mental health, and this thing that had been causing emotional turmoil in your life, perhaps you finally reach some kind of conclusion for that. Gemini, we have quite a few major arcana cards in your reading this week. So what that tells me is that you're going through some major changes, and rather than dealing with just like all of the little mundane issues, which the minor arcana is very sufficient at covering, sometimes when we have a lot of major arcana, it can be life-changing and philosophical quandaries being resolved for us in the current situation. So here in the place of the significator, we have the Death card. And the Death card is number 13. It is associated with Scorpio. So it's possible that some of you also have Scorpio prominent in your chart. Scorpio would also be Mars energy and Pluto energy, and moreover, the energy of transformation and a lot of these things we see in the 8th house, which is death, sex, and other people's resources. So, crossing the significator, we have another major change card. This one is a little more overtly painful. We have the 10 of Swords. 10 of Swords, you can see the owl is striving to pull one of the swords out of this person's back, but really it's too late. The vultures are here, ready to feast. We do see in the background these mountains, and in fact, part of the mountain formation is this skeleton, looking very much like the skeleton from the Death card. Talking about endings, talking about transformations, and the end specifically of a cycle. Now, the 10 of Swords can be a very painful ending, but it can also be an ending that needs to occur. And sometimes when that is the case, the pain is in it not ending. And with the ending comes a relief. And I will go ahead and tell you, we haven't gotten quite there yet. But in the future, we have the Ace of Swords. So where we have this closure with the 10 of Swords in the current situation, in the future, we have the Ace of Swords. So the beginning of a new cycle. And I'll cover that more when we get to that part of the reading. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I also don't want to forget the key details. So down here in the Imam Sealy, that is going to represent, and it's the card below the significator. It represents all of the origins and foundations upon which the goal or destiny will be built. And the goal or destiny is what is up here above the significator, kind of in the midheaven area. So this makes a lot of sense to have in the Imam Sealy. It is the Hanged Man in the reverse. This is an elemental water card and actually goes along with the energy of the Death card very well. So Scorpio energy, water energy. This is specifically more to do with Neptune, but this is also 12, and then we're progressing to 13. So where we see this card in the reverse, we're coming out of this period of stasis. We're coming out of this period of possibly self-sacrifice, coming out of a time where we are making these self-sacrifices in order to gain higher wisdom from them sometimes. So no longer being in this period of stuckness. So that makes a lot of sense in the current situation with the Death card, the Ten of Swords, all of that movement opening up for you. Here in your perspective, Gemini, we have the Hierophant coming out. And the Hierophant, seated between these two columns, we have these two black cats. We have these clergy members down here. The Hierophant is somebody who acts as an intermediary, as a voice box for the higher power, and is a leader by merit of their connection to the higher power and to source energy. And they convey these messages then to these clergy members, who then use that to pass out edicts to the general public, to the constituency specifically of that particular religious organization. And so with the Hierophant, we have a certain kind of law and order, more related to the status quo and more related to one's moral code and the prevailing moral code of one's society. So can have good aspects, can have bad aspects. The Hierophant is oracular, much like the High Priestess is oracular. The Hierophant is very similar to the Hermit. Sometimes the Hermit is the Hierophant, and sometimes the Hierophant goes into seclusion and becomes the Hermit. The Hierophant is Taurus's card in the major arcana, so some of you may have Taurus cusp or Taurus placements in your chart. And the Hierophant can also be related to marriage. So you might see yourself as a spiritual or moral leader among those around you. You might see yourself as a voice box for the higher power, again, to those around you. I don't see this as where we have the Hierophant coming out in the reverse. That would be more like the social morals confining you unduly. But in this particular case, it looks like we're seeing some of the elevated aspects of the Hierophant. Your perspective on this situation. So it's also possible that you are receiving guidance in the current time in disseminating that guidance to others, Gemini. So from an outsider's perspective, looking in on your situation, we have the Empress card, and she is upright here. The Empress is associated with divine feminine. This would be passive energy, but she is related to the planet Venus. She is the major arcana equivalent of the planet Venus, which we do see kind of represented here. And thus is also associated with, loosely associated with the signs of Taurus and with the sign of Libra. So we do have quite a bit of Taurus energy showing up in the reading. We are in Taurus season, so that makes sense. We will be heading into Gemini season, I think, in a week or two, right? Toward the end of the month. But let's talk about the Taurian energy before I really go into the Empress. So with Taurus, we're going to be seeking out comfort. We're going to be seeking out stability. And we're going to be working on finances in order to maintain comfort and stability. Now, it's very interesting that in the reading this particular week, so I kind of just do the readings for the week, but they might pertain to this week. They might pertain to the month. They might even be like year-long spreads, depending on what situation comes up in the reading, right? So we have a lunar eclipse in Scorpio that's going to be happening on May 15th and the early part of May 16th. And that is going to be visible in all of the United States and Canada, I believe. And so we have that energy coming out with the Death card. And then we have Taurus's energy coming out with the Hierophant here for you. I want to say Gabriel, but I'm talking about the sign of Gemini. So I'm not sure. Other than Gabriel is also kind of a messenger among the angels and is the one who blows the trumpet to signal the end times. So there could be something about that for you this week, Gemini specifically, that you are signaling something. You are the one signaling some kind of spiritual occurrence. It probably isn't the end times itself. Hi, Salem. Thank you for coming. It's good to see you. But just that these energies are coming out at this time, it could have something to do with the lunar eclipse, could have something to do with Taurus season specifically. So just keep those things in mind. So coming back to this Empress card, from outside people's perspectives, Empress being divine feminine, and also being somebody who is in more of a passive capacity. So what do I mean by that? So as far as passive fertility is concerned, passive fertility would be the egg being fertilized, and then it takes this time to grow and develop. Or like with a small business, you start it very small, and then it takes time to kind of build on your brand and develop it into something that then creates this wealth on its own almost. It doesn't always get to the point where it's independent of you, but it can also be, different kinds of passive income Maybe you write a book, you put it up on Amazon, and then it takes a while for the money to start rolling in as your reputation and knowledge about the book among the general public grows. So that would be the kind of growth that we would see with the Empress, and others might see this quality in you. Another aspect of this passive energy with the Empress is that things are brought to her. The Empress is typically not the head of state. Rather, the Emperor is, and the Empress, being like our First Lady here in the United States, is more receiving accolades on account of that status, but is not necessarily the precipitating factor in that status, if that makes sense. That it's who she is associated with that brings that status. So there's more passivity to that. And you don't have to be like man, woman, or non-binary person. You can be like any gender and still associate with those energies of the Empress. And also coming along with the Empress are these typically feminine pastimes and occupations. So things like motherhood, being a seamstress or a tailor, being somebody who is involved in the arts or dance, anything like that. So people are observing that about you at this time, Gemini. So now we're going to talk about this Ace of Swords in the future, which I mentioned because we have the Ten of Swords as the crossing card, crossing the significator in this reading. So we have the close of one cycle that is currently wrapping up for you right now. And then in the future, we have the beginning of this new cycle. And the Ace of Swords in the upright is an excellent card. So we still have this vulture here. The vulture's hanging around. They're picking the last scraps off of that corpse of the Ten of Swords. But we have a return of good fortune. So the bats in this deck are very representative of good fortune, whereas the owls in this deck are representative of the psyche. So you can see that could be a representation of the ba, or the spirit of the person leaving, with the owl there. And we don't have any owls on this card yet. We have a bunch of vultures still circling in the sky up ahead. We have those mountains in the background. So the mountains can mean obstacles that will need to be overcome. And we do have a lot of air energy in this card. This is the pure elemental energy of air. So Gemini, that is going to be excellent for you as an air sign and as a mutable air sign specifically to tap into. We have a transition between day and night occurring here as well. So we have this very small sliver of moon that could be immediately before the new moon occurs. We have light breaking on the horizon, so that could be dawn or it could be dusk. The Ace of Swords is very much like the Ten of Swords, like the Death card, like the Tower card, but there's an important exception to be made here, and that is that with the Ace of Swords, it is you, Gemini, who are going to be driving this change, driving the beginning of this new cycle. So it's time to come out of this period of stasis and start making your next move. Here in your hopes and fears, we do have the Ten of the Wheel of Fortune. So another 10. We have the 10 of Cups. In the past, we have the 10 of Swords here crossing the significator. And we have the Wheel of Fortune here in your hopes and fears. This is fixed sign energy. We have all of the fixed signs on this card. Even though there's a lot of mobility to the Wheel of Fortune. So the Wheel of Fortune is about how all these things are cyclical, and the cycles that you don't learn your lesson from, you have to repeat until you do. I prefer to think of the wheel as kind of like a top view of a roller coaster, because some parts of that cycle are going to be up, some parts are going to be down. Sometimes you run over a nail, sometimes you hit a bump in the road. So there are all kinds of potentialities. And with this card in the upright, in your hopes and fears, you could be hoping at this time, Gemini, for a change of fortune in your favor. And I do think that is coming, but I think more than being Deus ex machina, I think it's going to be coming by your own hand. And I think you're probably already putting these things into place and putting them into practice. So now we're going to look at the midheaven, which is the goal or destiny. And this is going to be based on what happens here with the Hanged Man in reverse. That period of being stuck is going to be over. So what we have there is the Eight of Pentacles reversed. Now, you could have been potentially, with these cards of ending here, you could have been pushed out of a long-term situation you were a part of. Or that could be what eventually happens. But for some of you, this Eight of Pentacles is going to be coming out in the reverse like this, in the position of the goal or destiny, because you're going to end up in a long-term career or monetary situation that you didn't foresee. This could be a change of career happening now, and then in the future, you will have been in that career for a long time. This could be an investment that seems kind of neither one way or the other when you get into it, but ends up being very fruitful. This Eight of Pentacles is not just going to be the result of coming out of this stasis either. I think it's also going to be the result of other people seeing you in this Empress energy. These two energies are going to be not the same, not identical, but remember, we do have Venus associated with the Empress. Venus is not just romance, Venus is also finance, and that is why Venus is also the ruler of the sign of Taurus. So we're going back to that Taurus energy also. So this might be a cycle that takes a little while to play out to the point that you can actually see it for what it is. So I think that is why this card is showing up in the reverse in your reading this week, Gemini. And not because it's not going to happen, but because it's going to be quite a bit down the road. And the final outcome for your reading this week, Gemini, we have a really interesting kind of dichotomy playing out in your reading between the Magician, which is mercurial energy, and the Empress card. So this is the energy that people are seeing you in currently, of the Empress. And your final outcome is this Magician, this mercurial energy, and it's showing up reversed. Now, the Magician has great creative potential. So we have another active energy depicted here in the wand. And we have lots of wands depicted on this card, which is interesting because Mercury is more associated with air sign energy. The two signs that are ruled by Mercury would be your sign, Gemini, and also Virgo, which is mutable earth energy. So there's infinite energy, that infinity symbol, the lemniscate on the Magician's hat, showing the infinite energy from which they have to draw for their magical workings. This card has some mountains, but they're way off in the distance. And then we have all these beautiful fluffy clouds overhead. So we don't see a lot of difficulty on this card. Things are easily overcome. Now, this card could be in the reverse for a few different reasons. As I mentioned, this can be kind of a dichotomy to the Empress energy, where the Magician is able to manifest in a much more active way rather than, as I described with the Empress's passive manifestation, right? So it might be encouraging you to kind of slow down just a little bit as far as your manifestation is concerned. It's interesting. I think I already said it's interesting that it's coming out in the reverse, because we also have that Ace of Swords in the future coming out in the upright. And if you look at the background on these two cards, it's very similar, except that here, those things are much further away. So I think that what we're talking about here is that once you start putting these things into place and the start of this new cycle, once this new cycle begins, then it will be time to work on your manifestations with more direct impact. So that is going to conclude the Gemini reading for this week. Thank you so much for joining me for the Gemini reading. I will be doing the next two air signs, and when I have finished those, I'm going to go over to the members side of the channel and do some crystal scrying with this beautiful piece of tiger hematite. You can see here it's got little fibers of tiger's eye running through it, and it has these beautiful stripes. If that interests you, you're cordially invited, but your presence here on the channel is greatly appreciated, no matter what form it takes. So next we're going to do the sign of Libra. Who else loves Dr. Pepper? I really love Dr. Pepper. And Libra, if you would like, go ahead and start setting your intention for the reading. Oh, good. How convenient. Just start allowing any concerns that you have that you'd like to address in the reading to rise up to the forefront of your thoughts. And just wait there patiently. Now, if these are things that are causing you anxiety or stress, I invite you to gently breathe through that energy. So as you inhale, draw in starting at the crown of your head and going down through the soles of your feet into the ground below so that you're completely filled with the divine white light of Source. And then as you exhale, just release any of that tension, any of that anxiety. If you have physical discomfort, you can release that as well. And it will be returned to Source, and it will be transmuted. And I will shuffle your cards just a little bit more. Okay. I could have stopped a while ago, but I wanted to shuffle them more. Interesting. Okay. I'm going to write down your timestamp. Okay, Libra. So we're going to start in the past for you. I have a very interesting card in the past because this is a card that is upright and it is often associated with divisive and decisive victories. So this person has gathered the spoils of the conflict here in the foreground. And they have kind of these shadowy figures in the background, implying that those people are kind of lost to this person forever. So they might have won this conflict, but by doing so, they have lost the potential to ever be friends with or associates of these people again. And again, we have these mountains in the background, which, as I mentioned, can be associated with difficulties that are going to need to be overcome. So even though the figure in the foreground has victory, that doesn't mean that they aren't still going to have difficulties that they need to overcome. We also have owls here, which can represent the psyche. You see this person's psyche is very close to them right here. And then we have this other owl. It could be somebody looking over their shoulder, right? Like their psyche is kind of looking at this person, but it's very far away. And then we have these flocks in the background, which are departing. You can kind of tell by the way that their wings are pointed that all of these psyches have departed from that situation. And we also have this very interesting little ball with wings here in the corner. I'm not quite sure what that's about, but it's very interesting. It looks like the moon, maybe, with wings. That's very interesting imagery for you air signs out there. Now, this card is in the upright, so this could have been a conflict that is resolved, but all the wounds are still very fresh. So let's find out some more about this situation and what is going to be coming out of it. So here in the place of the significator, this card jumped out. It is the Three of Pentacles. The Three of Pentacles is about group work. It is also about your professional reputation. So that's very interesting to come out on the heels of this, whatever this was. You could have really had to put your foot down about something professionally, such that you might have alienated some people from you in a decisive way. But that overall, this is going to end up being to your benefit. And it's going to be good that you did that, because it will be better for your professional reputation. And it will be better for any group work that you have to do moving forward. And of course, the Three of Pentacles, Pentacles is typically associated with earth energy and with money, but can also have to do with other kinds of resources. It could be a public works project. It could be any kind of project, really. It doesn't necessarily have to be like at work. The crossing card, we have another card associated with elemental air energy, which is the Fool. The Fool is also associated with the sign of Uranus, and you could take through that being associated with Aquarius, but that's not necessarily what we're looking at with the Fool. We're looking at more of the iconoclastic traits of Uranus. And we're looking at this mobility. We're looking at this activity. Now, the Fool, you can see they're not really looking where they're going. And their loyal companion, this dog, is nipping their heel, perhaps to get their attention, to prevent them from harming themselves. We have a bat on the card here, but the bat is very dormant. Good fortune is kind of just something that this person is taking for granted at this time. And this looks like a pheasant in the foreground. So the dog, rather than attacking this pheasant, has become confused possibly and is attacking the heel of the Fool. So there can be a lot going on. There can be a need to be able to go forward without knowing exactly what's going to happen. And that would make sense regarding one's professional reputation, and especially if you had come out of a situation that was really contentious and it's really fresh in your mind and in your psyche. So let's look down here at the Imam-Silai. The Imam-Silai is like right below the significator, and it represents the origins and foundations upon which the goal or destiny that we're going to be looking at up here above the significator with the midheaven card. We're going to look at the result of this when we get to the midheaven. So what we have down here in the Imam-Silai is the Five of Wands. And this is another card about kind of competitive circumstance. This is not as harsh as the Five of Swords. It doesn't look very similar to that card in the context of the deck, but there are ways in which the Five of Wands in practice could look very similar to the Five of Swords, but these are totally different situations. The Five of Wands, you have all of these people who are pretty much on even footing with each other. They're all dressed very similarly. They have similar physiques. And we have this volcano in the background. So the fives are going to be associated with Mars energy and with this kind of combative energy. And where we have this active Five of Wands card, that can be within creative cycles. So where you might learn things from other people and borrow or outright steal those ideas and incorporate them into things that you're doing. And then what you're doing becomes much better and it influences them in turn. So that's what we're looking at with the Five of Wands here. And then, of course, as people rise up out of those ranks, we get up to the Seven of Wands, where people start trying to knock you back down again. We're not there at this time. This is going to be a very creative environment for you, and especially where we have this group work and there's a lot of ideas and creativity bouncing around. For you, Libra, this could be a good opportunity for growth. And I see that opening up for you here. I also see, from your perspective on the current situation, we have pure elemental water, where we have the Ace of Cups. The Ace of Cups can be emotional renewal. We see here in the background, we have these mountains, and on top of that is a skull face down. So the face down skull is preparing for reincarnation. And I can go into a little bit of why I say that, but mostly like when you're laid in your resting place, you're laid on the back. But then when the person is face down, they're getting ready to push themselves up, if that makes sense. And the Ace of Cups can be new relationships. It can be emotional renewal coming from within the self. New relationships can be friendship or love relationships or partnerships of other kinds. There's a strong connection to the higher power, to spirit here, especially emotionally. So cups is going to be water receptivity and also having to do with emotions. And that is good because coming out of this situation, there could be hurt feelings. There could be a need for that emotional renewal. From an outside perspective looking in, some of you Libras might also have Aries placements in your chart. We have the Emperor here. The Emperor is control. You can see the control that he holds in the form of this holy hand grenade and in the form of the scepter here. The Emperor is a figure of authority. So people now see you, Libra, as someone who is in a position of authority. And that could be the result of this. Is definitely the result of this. Keeping your cool in the face of this Fool card energy. And that you might even be perceived as a natural leader in these circumstances where everybody's kind of rivals and there's a lot of competition. That even in that situation, Libra, you're being perceived as a natural leader. So that's very good. That's a good way for other people to perceive you. Here in the future, we have a very positive card. There's really no bad way for this to come out. We do have the Nine of Cups, which is our wish fulfillment card. And we have lots of bats here on the card, depicting that good fortune. We have a couple of owls depicting the psyche. And we have a crow or a raven here. Sometimes crows and ravens can be messengers from the higher power. And we also have this one chalice that is full of bones that have been picked clean, perhaps by a bird of prey. You could see that chalice full of bones as a connection to your ancestors also. So this card would be showing up in the reverse in the future, not because the wish isn't going to come true, but maybe you don't see the mechanisms, the exact means by which that wish is going to be fulfilled. So that is something that is perhaps still being cloaked from you at this time, but that there is wish fulfillment to be had, and the potential for that wish fulfillment is there. So there might also be additional steps that need to be taken in order to bring that wish fulfillment into fruition. And that's why it's showing up in the reverse. Here in your hopes and fears, Libra. We do have the Queen of Cups showing up reversed. And the Queen of Cups, you can see that we have this very large owl behind her. And the owl is bound to her forehead by these stone-like children. So that is her psyche being tightly bound inside her skull. And one thing about the Queen of Cups is that she's very nurturing to others, but burdened by her own psyche. She doesn't share those things with other people. Anytime you ask the Queen of Cups, how are you doing? She's like, I'm fine, right? Now, when we see the Queen of Cups showing up in the reverse like this, in your hopes and fears, you could be afraid of emotional manipulation. You could be afraid of encountering, so Queen of Cups is water of water energy. And some of the things that I said about the Empress in the Gemini reading would still hold true for the Queen of Cups. Still waters run deep, right? So you might also wish to keep your own emotions more hidden. And perhaps you feel like, people aren't paying attention to your emotional needs, even when you are very focused on the emotional needs of others. And that could be a hope or a fear for you. But we're entering this new cycle, this brand new situation. This is elemental water. This is water of water. So for all intents and purposes, is also elemental water. Going into this new situation, you are going to be able to make the rules. One advantage of being the emperor is that you lay out the edicts for how you will be treated. This is an active energy. This is a passive energy. So don't pay attention to the gender of the cards as much as paying attention to the active and passive aspects of them. So now we've gotten to the midheaven, which is going to be built on this environment of creative competition and rivalry. And the card that we have coming out in the midheaven is the Tower. And the Tower, we do have the figure of pi here, which is an infinite decimal. The Tower is destruction, but from this destruction comes new growth. It is a change, very much like the Death card is a change, very much like the Ten of Swords is a change. And just because we have destruction associated with this is planetary Mars energy. We have a lot of arrows on this card, a lot of active energy associated with this card. But you are showing up as the emperor to a lot of people. And the emperor is Aries energy, and Aries ruling planet is Mars. So you are definitely equipped to handle this transition appropriately. And it could be that first we get this transition, and from it comes the wish fulfillment. And that's why the Nine of Cups is reversed, because first you're going to have this destructive situation to deal with. And then in the final outcome, we have an air sign card, your fellow air sign of Aquarius. And this is fixed air sign energy, the star. We see the emblem of good fortune, the bat, back here, with all of these mountains, suggesting that sometimes what we need to overcome is our own good fortune. Now, the star card also has to do with 11th house aspects like social groups, social media, and how you interact with your social circles. Oh, yes, I love the star card too. And I love how it's illustrated in this deck. So there could be a few reasons why the star is coming out reversed in your reading, Libra, in the final outcome. I consider the final outcome to be like kind of a warning card in some situations. Like it can tell you where you need to adjust different parts of your tactics. And it is in opposition to the position of where or how others view you. So if others are viewing you as this emperor, this authority figure, and you are mingling too much with social groups, so Salem Grey Wolf, this deck is the Jack-o'-lantern Tarot. It is a low Scarabeo deck. I think I bought this from magic.com, but I don't quite remember. It should still be available. It was printed fairly recently. I think that you're being encouraged here to perhaps groom your social media presence a bit to be more in line with taking a leadership role. Look at all those bats. So good fortune. All of the Aries energy. Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for stopping by. And that might be what is holding back your hopes and dreams from coming true. We do have both of these cards, the Nine of Cups in the future and the Star card in the final outcome, that both have to do with wish fulfillment and your hopes and dreams coming true. They're coming out in the reverse. And that does tell me that there is something, there might be some adjustments that need to be made to bring that wish fulfillment to fruition. And it's very much going to have to do also with keeping your cool and staying composed and in a role of leadership when disaster strikes, whatever this represents. And that is going to clear the path for you to step into the reality that you desire. So that is going to conclude the Libra reading for this week. I'm going to be going after the Aquarius reading over to the members side of the channel to do some crystal scrying with this beautiful piece of tiger hematite. You can see it's got these little bands of tiger's eye. They're kind of sparkly when you get the light, just so. So if that interests you, you're cordially invited. But your presence here on the channel is greatly appreciated in whatever form it takes. So now we are going to move on to the sign of Aquarius. And Aquarius, if you would like to go ahead and set your intention for the reading, just allow any of the concerns you have, any thoughts that you would like to address in the reading, allow those issues to come up and kind of float around in the forefront of your thoughts, and allow them to gently and patiently wait there while I shuffle. And if any of these things are stressful to you or are causing you anxiety or discomfort, I invite you to gently breathe through that energy. So take a deep breath in and draw the divine white light of Source down through the crown of your head. Let it fill your entire body, down through the soles of your feet and into the ground below. And then as you exhale, just release any of that anxiety, any of that tension, any fear, any discomfort that you're holding in your body. Allow that to be released. It will be returned to Source, and it will be transmuted. And I just want to mention that I say the word Source in a very general way. If you have particular deities that you like to work with, I invite you to use their help with that exercise. But using Source keeps it inclusive and keeps it very general. And I'm definitely shuffling the cards a lot today. But I should be done soon. I promise. Okay. So, Aquarius, let me write down your timestamp. And we can get started with your reading. The place of the significator is very interesting. So we'll cover that very shortly. We have a good mix in your reading of minor arcana and major arcana. We have a few court cards showing up for you, so this is a very balanced reading as far as the different cards that we have showing up. All of the suits seem to be pretty well represented. Seems pretty balanced so far, so let's get into it. Here in the past, we have the Page of Swords in the upright. The Page of Swords can be a younger air sign person, but the focus of this card is on obtaining information. So we see his hat, his helmet is an owl. We have these owls here in the sky hovering in the background. They could be performing reconnaissance to this person in the foreground. Owls in this deck are associated with the psyche and, of course, with information coming in. So you could have taken a class recently. You could be in college. You could be in school. You could be in the middle of taking a class that you have started, not too long ago. You could be in the midst of an educational process at this time. You could be learning a new skill also. And Aquarius, your significator and your crossing card this week, it's a very interesting combination. We have the Chariot card, which is about mobility and victory. And that is crossed by the Knight of Pentacles. And the Knight of Pentacles is bringing in money. This is fire of earth energy. There's a lot of mobility in this card as well. And typically the Knight of Pentacles is riding a horse, and it's a black horse. But we see here the black and the white horse. There's a certain amount of duality to the Chariot. So the Chariot is associated with the astrological sign of Cancer. And one of the things about that sign of Cancer is the energy of reciprocation in emotional connections. And there's a balance there. There's a duality to that. And we kind of see that with the horses here too, that the one horse is trying to instigate something. We're not sure what. With the black horse here, the charioteer is watching all of this unfold, but is very unbothered by it, has their hand firmly on the reins, another hand firmly on this scepter. Mobility and victory in the current situation for you, Aquarius. And it could be because of this new information that you're learning at this time. And of course, this money is headed towards you. Sometimes people say that the Knight of Pentacles is money moving in slowly, but I just see it as the Knight of Pentacles is going to be the slowest of all of the knights, but it's still moving quite quickly. And probably at about the same pace as the Chariot. So if financial increase is victory for you, that would be, of course, what that means. But those two things could be happening independent but simultaneously with each other too. So down here in the Imam that's going to be down here underneath the significator. We're looking at the foundations upon which everything from the midheaven, your goals and your dreams and destiny, those things being fulfilled, they're going to be based on everything that happens in the Imam line. So what we have down there is the Eight of Cups reversed. This is really interesting because the Eight of Cups is a card of departure, and there's also a lot of mobility in this card. So the Eight of Cups is leaving a situation where a project was almost complete. And because this is showing up in the reverse in the Imam Sili, I feel like you had decided to wait out a situation. You decided not to leave a situation. But the mobility was there anyway. Possibly somebody had promised you a promotion at a job, and they just kept making this promise and then not fulfilling it. And finally you threaten to leave. And that is what instigates in them the need to give you that promotion and to give you more money. That could be the situation. It could be that you had made an investment in something and it wasn't paying off, and you were going to sell it and just cut your losses, and then all of a sudden it ends up making a lot more money. So that's a possibility also. It could be like a business you start with another person, or a few other people and you get almost to the point of making money and you think it's never going to make money and you talk about leaving and then all of a sudden things start to really pick up. That's another possibility. And I'm just going over all these possibilities so that you will hopefully figure out how it is that it might apply to your own life. So, over here, from your own perspective, Aquarius, we have the Two of Wands reverse. So that lets me know that you did not predict this outcome, that you did not plan for this, and you feel like you haven't planned for it. You feel like you had planned for a completely different outcome, perhaps. And so with the Two of Wands here, there might be feeling a bit unprepared for what is coming. I don't think that's necessarily the case, though. Here, from the other person's perspective, we have the Judgment card, and it's showing up in the upright. So judgment is not what we see regarding fairness and equity with the Justice card, which is a fellow air sign card. Judgment is ruled by the element of fire and is also associated with the planet Pluto. So the transformative energy of fire, trial by fire, if you will. We do see the angel Gabriel playing the horn, letting everybody know that Judgment Day is here. It's time to rise up from your graves and come into the heavens or go down below, depending on how you comported yourself in this life. So the Judgment card showing up as an outside perspective, looking in on your situation, people could see that you're being tested at the current time. And they might be watching to see how you handle this transition. And of course, judging, as one does when one is not directly in that situation. So you could be, I'm sorry, I kind of made a mouth sound there. Let me drink some of this. My throat's getting a little dry. So, here in the future, we have the King of Wands, and he's showing up in the reverse. King of Wands in the reverse can be a very harsh energy. The King of Wands is fire sign energy. This is air of fire. So two active elements, very active energy. The King of Wands could be somebody who has a lot of creative ideas, leads through their charismatic ways. But when they're showing up in the reverse, there's the potential there for somebody to have a very volatile temper. Now, this card could be showing up in the future because this is how you will be moving into the future, Aquarius, but you don't see it yet. And so eventually it would come out as the elevated King of Wands. That is a possibility. But I should also put out there the idea that this might be a person who's in a position of authority in the current situation. Oh, thank you for coming by, Salem Grey Wolf. It was really good to see you. That might be the person who's judging you. And depending on your performance in the current situation, they might be a good creative collaborator, or they might become very difficult to deal with. So that is the caution that I would give in the current situation. And it might be based on their perceptions on your perceptions, rather, that you're not prepared for this situation. Don't sell yourself short in this, Aquarius. And I'll tell you why in just a minute. So in your hopes and fears, we have the World card. The World card is fixed sign energy. Here's you, Aquarius, right up here. We have the Scorpio, Leo, Taurus, holding down the four corners of the earth. This card is associated with elemental earth energy and with planetary Saturn energy. So very stable, established energies. And it's very interesting. You can see this hand reaching down from behind the legs of that dancing figure. We do have this skull up at the top, but that would be too far removed for that hand to be connected to a fully embodied skeleton. So that's a very interesting that we see that hand reaching down toward the earth and showing that concretion process taking place, that completion, concretion, establishment, that we all do pass away someday. And that bony hand is reaching down and anchoring that energy in the soil of the earth. Now, this card is showing up in the upright in your hopes and dreams. You are hoping that everything is going to reach a satisfactory state of completion and be wrapped up in a nice little bow and be fully established and everything very stable. And it is because you are kind of coming from this place of insecurity, Aquarius. Now, if you see on the Two of Wands, this person is holding the earth in their hands. And then, of course, with the World card, we have the entirety of the world here. So you're already holding the key to this completion in your hands. And it might take a little extra planning in the current situation on the fly for you to really tap into that, Aquarius. Here in the midheaven, so this is going to be the result of what we saw down here, deciding not to leave with the Eight of Cups. And the outcome of that is going to be this Page of Cups, this offer. So there is a fish skeleton here in this chalice. The fish can represent in cartomancy money. So the Page of Cups is an offer coming in. Remember, we had that Knight of Pentacles. We already know that money's coming in. This could be another offer being made. Excuse me. It could be an offer of a promotion. It could be an offer of a raise. There's all kinds of possibilities there. It could even be an offer of a love relationship. Now, if you look, because you decided not to leave this Eight of Cups situation, then when this Page of Cups brings you this other cup, then you end up with the Nine of Cups, and you end up with that wish fulfillment. So it could be somebody bringing in the key to that puzzle that makes everything lock into place, just like you want it, Aquarius, according to the World card. And the final outcome for you is the Moon card in the reverse. And the way that I take this in your reading, typically the Moon card, this is Piscean energy, which is mutable water. has a lot to do with the arts, but also has a lot to do with uncertainty, with the way forward being dark and possibly perilous and not easy to discern. So I think that this card coming out in the reverse in the final outcome for you, Aquarius, goes back to this Two of Wands and you feeling uncertain about the future. I think that you actually know you're much more competent than you're giving yourself credit for. I think you actually have all of this information already, Aquarius, and you already know these things. You already know what's going to happen. It's not uncertain at all, actually. And behaving as though you have this uncertainty is going to cause others around you to falter in their own behavior and perhaps slip into some bad habits that they might have conquered otherwise. So I encourage you to move forward through this situation with confidence. Do not assume that you don't know things. Assume that you do know things and be confident in that. So that is going to conclude the Aquarius reading for this week. That is all of the air signs. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you for joining me for the reading today on the live stream. And thank you for those of you who end up watching it later. Your likes, shares, and subscriptions are greatly, greatly appreciated. And of course, I love reading your comments in the live stream and on the videos. So now I'm going to go over to the member side of the channel and do the crystal scrying. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you again.